With its iconic white and blue livery, the Air Force One is perhaps the most iconic and recognizable airplane in the world. It is the primary means of long-distance transport for the President of the United States. There are two Air Force Ones. In the event that one is damaged or in need of maintenance, the second can be used. Technically, any airplane that the sitting president flies on is called Air Force One. As soon as the president leaves the plane, it is technically no longer called Air Force One. The proper name for the blue and white aircraft is the Boeing VC-25A. Introduced in 1990, it is a heavily modified Boeing 747-200. The VC-25A is now 35 years old. Much of its features and technology are dated. In 2018, Donald Trump negotiated a deal with Boeing to make a new presidential plane called the VC-25B. Boeing is to deliver two aircraft for the price of $4.3 billion. The VC-25B was originally planned to be delivered in 2024. Development has not gone according to plan. Delivery has been delayed to 2029, and the estimated cost has ballooned to over $7 billion. Boeing signed a fixed-price contract, so they are on the hook for all cost overruns. The company now expects to lose almost $3 billion on the project. In this video, we'll look at why the Air Force One is so difficult and expensive to build. When researching for videos like this one, I read hundreds of news articles. For any given topic, it can be hard to understand the full perspective, because every media outlet has its own bias. That's why I use Ground News, who's also the sponsor of this video. They're a website and app. They gather news from around the world in the entire political spectrum. This allows you to compare coverage and verify information. For example, check out this story about Trump considering buying used planes to serve as Air Force One amid Boeing delays. Ground News gives 78 headlines about this story. You can see that the coverage is slightly skewed to the left. While most of the headlines are what you'd expect, you can also find some pretty surprising perspectives. There's this one from the left-leaning CNN saying, "President Trump is angry over delays to Air Force One. It could spell even more trouble for Boeing." The right-leaning Western Journal says, "Trump tells Musk to fix new Air Force One boondoggle. Here are the wild features an Elon-built AF-1 might have." Unsurprisingly, the right-leaning articles have a more favorable view of Musk's potential involvement. Another really cool feature on Ground News is the blind spot feed. It curates important stories that get little to no attention from one side of the political spectrum. It's a great way to broaden our perspectives, and has been great at helping me uncover stories I normally wouldn't have seen. And because Ground News is subscription-based, you never have to view any ads. Ground News has been an invaluable tool helping me understand the full perspective on complex and controversial topics. And now I'm giving my viewers 40% off this unlimited access plan, which you can get by scanning the QR code or going to ground.news/WSM. And now back to the video. Boeing was awarded the contract to build the VC-25A in 1986. They were completed in 1990. V stands for Very Important Person, and C stands for Cargo. The VC-25A is a heavily modified 747-200. The double-decker 747 is the largest family of civilian aircraft Boeing has ever made. To say that the VC-25A is heavily modified would be an understatement. If you go inside, it's unrecognizable from a commercial 747. It has sleeping quarters for the president, a bathroom with a shower, the president's personal doctor, and medical supplies. There's a conference room where the president can meet with his advisors, and sometimes members of the media are also allowed on board. The VC-25A supports a crew of 26 and a maximum capacity of 76 passengers. Long flights can take many hours, and the presidents travel frequently. It is thus important that the president can continue working while in Air Force One. The VC-25A has a large office room which acts as a flying oval office. The president has computers that are connected to the internet via military satellites. The plane has secure telephones which also operate via satellite connectivity. The VC-25A has various air defense countermeasures. It has flares which can confuse heat-seeking missiles, similar to what we see here on an AC-130 gunship. It also has infrared jammers which serve a similar purpose. It likely has many other defensive measures which are not disclosed to the public. It has the ability for mid-air refueling. This allows the aircraft to stay airborne for an almost indefinite period of time. Finally, all the electronic systems and wiring are designed to be resistant to an electromagnetic pulse, such as those created by the detonation of a nuclear bomb. Given the unique capabilities of the VC-25A, the cost to develop it was not cheap. In 1986, the Air Force awarded a $200 million contract to build 2 units of the aircraft, or $125 million for each aircraft. At the time, the 747-200 had a list price of $39 million. So the VC-25A would cost a little over 3 times more than its commercial counterpart. Meeting the Air Force's stringent requirements was far more difficult than Boeing had imagined. The most difficult part was ensuring all the electronic communications equipment was resistant to jamming and electromagnetic pulses. The VC-25A has 1.26 million feet of wiring. This is more than double the amount of wiring in a normal 747-200. The VC-25A was supposed to be completed in 1989, but it wasn't ready until 1990. Boeing agreed to a fixed-price contract of $250 million. They thought they could build the planes for less than this. Boeing was sorely mistaken. The project ended up costing $636 million, $385 million over budget. Because it was a fixed-price contract, Boeing incurred massive losses. The Air Force had no sympathy for Boeing. They maintained that they were upfront and transparent with all their requirements. It was Boeing's fault for underbidding on the contract. The VC-25A has now been flying for 35 years, serving presidents from Bill Clinton to Donald Trump. In 2015, the US Air Force decided it was time to replace the aging VC-25A. In a briefing, they explained that the 747-200 is outdated, having ceased production in 1987. Very few commercial airlines still fly the plane. The only countries where passenger airlines still fly the 747-200 are Iran, Nigeria, and Pakistan. Due to the aircraft's old age, it needs more maintenance and replacement parts are harder to come by. This has resulted in escalating costs to operate the plane. The Air Force estimates that it now costs almost $200,000 per hour to fly the VC-25A. Imagine you have an old car which breaks down frequently. Each year it becomes more expensive because you have to pay for increasingly costly repairs. At some point, it becomes cheaper to buy a new car. The new car will also have a newer engine with better fuel efficiency. The Air Force decided that the 747-8 would be a suitable replacement. The new plane would be called VC-25B. Introduced in 2008, the 747-8 is 38 years newer than the 747-200. It is slightly larger, has a 15% longer flying range, and an 18% greater maximum takeoff weight. It also has newer engines, which are far more fuel efficient. Shortly after Donald Trump was elected president in 2016, he took aim at the project for its excessive cost. In December of 2016, he said the costs were out of control at more than $4 billion. At this point, a final contract had not yet been signed, so the $4 billion number was just an estimate. In 2018, the Trump administration negotiated a deal with Boeing. Boeing would be paid $3.9 billion to develop two VC-25B aircraft. Just like last time, this is a fixed-price contract. In Boeing's most recent annual report, they now say the contract is worth $4.3 billion. It's not really clear why the price increased from $3.9 to $4.3 billion. Despite it being a fixed-price contract, there may have been some sort of predetermined inflation escalator. Remember that Boeing was burned badly 30 years ago on their fixed-price contract for the VC-25A. The total cost of the VC-25A was approximately $635 million in 1990. That's about $1.6 billion 2025 dollars adjusted for inflation. They're now getting paid $4.3 billion to make the VC-25B, almost 3 times greater than the last one. The high price gave Boeing a sizable margin of safety to make a handsome profit, or so they thought. Boeing already had two 747-8s in their inventory. These were ordered by a Russian airline called Transaero. Transaero went bankrupt and ceased operations before the aircraft could be delivered, so Boeing had two brand new 747-8s to make the new Air Force One. Development officially began in 2018 with an expected delivery date of 2024. The technical requirements for the VC-25B were daunting. Hacking and electronic warfare technologies have significantly advanced over the past 30 years. The VC-25B needs far more sophisticated safeguards and countermeasures to face these evolving threats. But there was an even bigger issue. Throughout the 2010s, Boeing's corporate culture began to rot as the company emphasized speed and profits over quality and safety. This manifested itself in cutting corners on the manufacturing floor, insufficient safety checks, etc. As we all know, this resulted in numerous disasters in Boeing's civilian airplanes since 2018. The cultural rot at Boeing has also impacted its defense business, albeit in a different way. When Boeing develops a military aircraft, the military sends inspectors to monitor the development and production carefully. Big Brother is always watching. If they see any corners being cut, they'll demand rectification. This is especially true for the Air Force One, given the critical importance of its mission. Every mistake that needs to be corrected adds time and cost to the program. By 2021, red flags were already starting to pop up. One of the workers failed a drug test, and empty tequila bottles were found inside one of the aircraft. Since 2019, Boeing has been preoccupied with seemingly endless disasters in its civilian aircraft business. Trying to fix the civilian business has been a huge strain on management attention and other company resources. This distracted from the VC-25B, which was falling farther and farther behind schedule and over budget. Because development took so much longer than expected, many of the suppliers and subcontractors that Boeing originally intended to use have now gone bankrupt. Boeing has to find new suppliers, which is a time-consuming and costly endeavor. The estimated cost of the program has increased from the original $4.3 billion to $7.1 billion. Boeing now expects that it will lose almost $3 billion on the project. The VC-25B is now expected to be delivered in 2029, 5 years behind schedule. Given the track record, I would not at all be surprised if the project ends up costing far more than $7 billion. There's an old saying in Texas that if you fool me, you can't get fooled again. But it looks like this is exactly what happened to Boeing. They lost almost $400 million on the VC-25A. Now they're on track to lose almost $3 billion on the VC-25B. God only knows how much they'll lose on the VC-25C. The Air Force One is perhaps the most technologically sophisticated aircraft in the world, at least when it was built. Many new technologies and innovations are required to meet the Air Force's requirements. The research and development is only amortized against 2 units, resulting in an obscenely high unit cost. The timeline and costs associated with developing such advanced technologies is very difficult to estimate. Boeing overestimated its own capabilities. They beat the competition and won the contracts because they were willing to accept fixed price terms. This arrogance cost them dearly. Alright guys, that wraps it up for this video. What do you think about the Air Force One? Let us know in the comments section below. As always, thank you so much for watching and we'll see you in the next one. Wall Street Millennial, signing out.